and welcome to Cinema Spectator, a show where an expert and a casual movie fan watch movies in the cinematic canon. Today's film is First Man, directed by Damien Chazelle, starring Ryan Gosling and Claire Foy. My name is Cameron Tuttle, and I'm joined with Isaac Ransom. Isaac, how are you?
I am doing well. I'm well rested. You know, we took a week off. Cameron, it's good to be back in front of the mic. I'm so proud of you. Cameron finally got an SM7B, and he's gonna sound wonderful. I just know you guys are just gonna be blown away by the
being nerdy. Oh my goodness.
The 5% audio difference that the listeners will hear.
You think that they care about what mic I'm using? Ugh, jeez.
I will say, for being a scrappy indie podcast, I think we have a pretty decent sound. Like, I think there's some very positive audio quality coming out of this show.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually think that's one of our maybe main assets is that we actually sound good. Compared to a lot of shows, I do actually feel like we sound genuinely pretty good. And yeah, I mean, even back in the day when we were doing ECFS, we had we didn't sound as good, obviously, but we definitely knew almost half of what we were doing, so we didn't sound terrible.
Yeah, and if this is your first impression of the show, we're not usually this cocky. I'm so sorry for this introduction. Cameron, how are you?
I'm doing good. I don't feel like it's cocky. I feel like we, if anything, we we're willing to drop some cash for microphones. That's not cocky.
There we go. It's all for you guys.
I know. Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm doing good. It was actually good to have a week off. It was my anniversary this weekend. Actually yesterday. It was my 8-year anniversary with my girlfriend. So, we had a good time. We spent the weekend together and it was good to just relax and not do anything. We actually went up to, Twain Harte. I don't know if you know where that is, but, near Pinecrest.
Oh yeah. No, I've been to Pinecrest a bunch. So I've definitely been to Twain Harte somehow. But.
Yeah. So we went up there and we actually walked all of Pinecrest one day. It was cool. So honestly, we just wanted to get away and just relax with each other for a bit. So it was good to take some time off. But how about you? How was your week off?
Oh, it was good. It was definitely good. I think I just I spent a lot of time hanging out. I was house sitting for this house that had some of the most ancient dogs I've ever seen in my life. It was like one of the dogs was 17 years old and had mental issues. So she was tweaking out. She was like a Chihuahua. Okay. And the other one had just had a seizure and was 15. And that guy stunk. Like he would take he hated me. He would take secret poops around me and I'd be like, what's that smell? Like, what is it? And so I'd be looking around the house and eventually I'd find it. They're just very old and they just kind of, go to the bathroom wherever. So it was kind of a stressful house sitting experience, but somewhat still kind of fun just to sit on the couch and play Call of Duty and all that. So it was nice, juggling work on top of that. Overall, really positive. I was just going to note, if you're from California, haven't been to Pinecrest, that lake hike is one of my favorite things on earth. I have to say, awesome. It is just, it's not difficult, but I had a really special experience there one time when I was probably about 3-4 years ago. I went up there with my family and it was during a time where, California's on fire, big shocker. And, there was so much smoke over the lake that it was it was just super eerie. There's for some reason we were on the verge of being evacuated, but they didn't evacuate us. And my brother and I really want to do this hike called Cleo's Baths. There's one section of that hike where it's this open field kind of area. I don't know if you remember that section.
Yeah, of course.
And you kind of just continue down this area where it splits and you go up a little bit higher. And there's these natural baths, but Glenn and I we went up there and the smoke was so thick you have to rock climb these boulders getting up there that we were probably getting respiratory problems, but it was just amazing. I've never seen anything like it in my life. To experience a hike like that where we probably shouldn't have been there, but it was no one else was up there. It was really special. So
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful lake, and that hike it feels very self-contained. You know exactly what kind of where you're going.
yeah.
There's no, it all feels very, very contained. I loved going across the dam. Like that was really cool because I think they
Mm,
were letting out a bunch of water. And so that loud like rushing of the water, and you
right.
could see it at the bottom, and it was just really cool. It was neat. I don't know. We had a good time going up there.
Dude,
So
I'm glad that's the place to be. That's an awesome place to get away for sure. Cameron, what have you been watching lately? Anything good? Anything of
so much.
note?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been 2 weeks, so
I know.
I've watched at least 5 movies. I think. I don't
Whoa.
know.
Whoa.
But two that I want to mention at least. So I watched a movie called Hard Eight, by Paul Thomas Anderson, which
Mm,
I had never seen before, but really, really liked that. I thought it was um very interesting in terms of um I guess how it dealt with its characters, how it kind of positioned the movie. Yeah, very interesting. It's a debut film from PTA, so yeah, weird little movie, very small scale, very kind of but like larger than life in a lot of ways. Yeah, I really liked it a lot. And then I saw a movie called Last Night in Soho, which is by Edgar Wright.
mm,
New. It's in theaters. And yeah, I was a little mixed on it, particularly because I felt like the latter third of the movie didn't really hold up as well as the beginning half, and honestly, I thought the beginning was so beautiful and so well done, and that's what kind of let me down was the last part, the last kind of third of the movie, just really didn't do it for me. I don't want to go into too much detail because it's in theaters, so I don't want to
yeah.
spoil it, but I would still recommend it, and honestly, like if you're into Edgar Wright, if you're into those kinds of movies, I feel like he's definitely struck something a bit there, but for me, it didn't follow through enough, and was kind of a letdown in the end, which is too bad. And then I saw Dune, and loved that. I have lots of thoughts on Dune, and maybe we could talk about that more in depth some other time, Isaac. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I'd actually like to go see it again because it was something that kind of captured my imagination in a way that is very new and has not happened in a long time, and is one that I am sort of continuing to think about in a lot of ways. And so yeah, I definitely recommend Dune. I don't think it's it's probably not for everybody, I guess, but
Yeah.
it's a movie that for me I genuinely thought was um something special, something pretty special.
Yeah.
So
Dune is the only film that I've seen in the last 2 weeks, and I've already seen it twice. Absolutely just enchanted by this movie. I was telling one of our patrons, Tim, who wrote into the show, and we'll be hearing from him in a moment, but I was telling him how like it's been so long since I've watched a movie for the second time and felt an emotional impact almost just as strong, if not stronger, than the first time I've watched it. Right.
yeah,
And I'm not one to like revisit movies quickly either. So it was really weird for me because I walked out of the theater being like, well, that was so overwhelming. That was such an overwhelming experience that I just couldn't even process it, but I am drawn to see it again. And the second viewing was even like better because I had already like I was enjoying the spectacle versus just being like almost in awe of the spectacle. Does that
yeah,
make sense? Yeah, it's
100%. Yeah,
so I highly recommend you see this film. If you love sci-fi, there's literally like no excuse. This movie is designed to be watched on the big screen, and I'm not one to say that about any
Total,
movies.
100,000%. Not only is it designed to be seen on a big screen, it's designed to be listened to on a big screen
Yes.
in a big theater. It's so special. So I saw it at the Grand Lake Theater, which, you know, it's not, I wouldn't say it's like the greatest and biggest theater, but it's a massive screen, a really big space, and it feels like the sound in there is really, really good. And so like I was really, really impressed with sort of how it like captured my it captured my imagination in a lot of ways. Like it made me feel like this movie was like the like massive, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the scope of this movie is so ginormous. And it really does demand the biggest screen possible. I am one of those people who kind of, I always recommend people see it on the biggest screen possible, see movies on it on the biggest screen possible. And this one, I think especially, deserves to be shown as kind of a spectacle piece. It really commands that, I would say. So
I don't mind lingering on this topic for a little bit, but I do believe that Cameron and I will be diving into Dune maybe as a Patreon exclusive thing,
yeah,
to kind of coincide with this month, which we'll introduce here in a moment. But like just to kind of bounce off that last thought, right? I had seen No Time to Die earlier, and I remember thinking like, wow, this is a fantastic movie. Like, you need to see it on the big screen. I'm like, this is like a blockbuster, and I'm having so much fun watching it. And then I saw Dune after that, and I was like, no, this movie is for the big screen. Like, I don't know how else to, I know that's kind of like a strange like comparison, but like James Bond is fantastic on the big screen, but it's going to be great at home. Like Dune, I almost feel like I'd never want to watch it on a TV. And it's like, and so with my second viewing, I like forced my dad to go. Like he wanted to go see James Bond instead. I said, no, like you got to see this movie like on the big screen. It's gonna be something special for you. So we got I went up to the second viewing on a bigger screen than I saw the last time with crazier sound. And just from the opening moments, like, you know, you're in for a treat where it like is that alien language, right? And I'm not going to get into spoilers, but it's like dreams or something of like whatever. And like there's some statement and it's got that low rumbling like walk thing. And you know, and then like the music that explodes from that. Man, I know, I mean, shout out to our executive producer Darren. If you haven't seen this film, like, you got to go see it.
Definitely,
I know you're a total sci-fi nerd. Like, hit me up if you haven't seen it. I'll go see it a third time with you. Like, I am just desperate for someone to invite me to go see this movie another time because I loved it. So
yeah, I definitely want to see it in IMAX. That's totally something I would, you know, I would drop a lot of things to go to go see it in IMAX for sure.
There are so many moments in the film in the second viewing that like just had like a new life that I didn't like, scenes that are like almost overwhelming. I mean, the excavator scene, which is just fantastic.
Amazing. Some of the best action since like Fury Road. Like legit.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Like, that scene on the second viewing still had me almost like trembling at the scope of what was going on. But there were so many other things that I had missed in the first viewing with Paul's experience in that scene. Yeah. I don't want to spoil it anymore, but like it's been a long time since I've seen a movie in theaters where I was like, no, I need to see this like as much as I can before it leaves the theater.
Yeah.
So
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I totally agree. I think we should dive into it deeper on a bonus situation. But I hear you have questions. Is that true?
It's true. We're gonna start with your hot take, Cameron.
Yes.
We do this every show. It's just a random question that has nothing to do with the film. I promise we're gonna get to the movie at hand eventually. Right?
Whatever.
Cameron, what do you think of Pumpkin? In the name of the season, what do you think of Pumpkin? Just take it any direction you want to go.
I love Pumpkin. I actually think Pumpkin is good and underrated food. I know it's very much seen as this flavoring agent, which obviously pumpkin is not the flavor. It's like the cinnamon and coriander and spice and whatever. That's the flavor that people are thinking of when they think of pumpkin. Okay, but that's come on. It's not pumpkin, but pumpkin is actually good food. It's a squash. So you could. You could,
Cameron, I could let you rant on this for 5 more minutes. I just want to cut you off at this point. I'm like, I don't need to hear this.
It's a squash
culinary school thing. All right.
And it's good as it's sort of baked as a dessert. Obviously, pumpkin pie is very good. But as my parents always. My mom loves pumpkin, first of all, but we always make this thing around Halloween called stuffed pumpkin, which is basically you bake a mini pumpkin with fillings and whatever else, and it's delicious. It's a good time. Wow. So I'm pro pumpkin all the way. Now one thing I will say is pumpkin smell, I think, is not very good. And I think it's pretty overused personally. And I think it has to come down to bad pumpkin smell, really.
Well, I have to say, I walked into my house after house sitting, the ancient dogs of pee and poo, right? And my mom had like this pumpkin scent thing, and it smelled fantastic. Most times I hate it, but I walked in, I was like, whoa, this is amazing to be here. Maybe
I'm sure there's good pumpkin smell. Usually it just tastes, or it just smells a little bit fake like it's like a little bit off, and kind of just smells like overwhelmingly like cinnamon and spice and whatnot.
I'm just kind of surprised how much you're into like actual Like, I gotta ask you, Cameron, would you ever take a bite out of a pumpkin?
Yeah, I've eaten pumpkin. I've eaten pumpkin for sure. I mean, if it's baked, obviously.
No, I'm talking about like would you take a bite out of a pumpkin?
Out of a raw pumpkin? No. Yeah. Would you take a bite out of a potato? What are you, stupid?
Your perception of pumpkin is like, you want filet mignon pumpkin. You don't want meatloaf pumpkin.
No. Pumpkin is like a potato. Like, do you eat raw potato? No. But is potato delicious every way that it's cooked? Yes, obviously.
Well, but I will say that I think potato mixed with almost anything you can't mess up. I mean, like, I had a Korean corn dog recently, and I was like, wow, this is crazy to put potato on the outside of a corn dog. I feel like I'm gonna explode. But I feel like pumpkin it's been overdone. It's been
not pumpkin as a flavor, yeah, but not pumpkin as a squash. No.
Yes, pro squash. Cameron is pro squash.
I love squash. Squash is good.
On that note, this is a movie podcast. Cinema Spectator.
No, it's not. Come on, don't lie. Don't lie to the audience.
You can support us at patreon.com/ECFS Productions. Get an exclusive commentary track or episode. If you want to hear us talk about Dune, make sure to check it out. Patreon.com/ECFS Productions. Only for $1, you get access to that. You can also have your questions read on air, claim the ability to vote on films that we watch each month. And if you don't have a few dollars, it's all good. We just appreciate ratings. Tell friends and family. That helps the show grow. One of our Patreons, Tim Smith, I got that right, wrote in a question. I'm asking our Patreons lately to really take advantage of their question asking. I'm like, come on, guys, write us something meaty. So this is going to be the last side tangent before we get into the film. And Juzo has a question for us at the end of the show. Tim has a question regarding Wes Anderson. So I'm going to try my best to read this right. Wes Anderson's The French Dispatch is the most Wes Anderson, quote, quote, style of film to date, meaning all of his quirks, symmetric shots, music, and color palette went to 11. I heard some criticism on this film as it would be too sensitive for some viewers, and it was catered really heavily to intense fans. So, is it a good thing for a director to have full say on the direction of his film? Does it hurt a film? Or is crafting a film for your fans better? Side note, some of 2021's films have been released on streaming services and theaters on the same day. it's almost impossible for general audiences to know the numbers behind streaming services.
Mm.
But how should we begin to define the success of a film that bombs at the box office, but is generally popular on streaming? So that's kind of like two questions. Let's just
Yeah.
go into the Wes Anderson thing, Cameron. I don't know anything about Wes Anderson, and his opinion on the French Dispatch. But I think the broader question about creatives making things for them first versus and for their fans versus like maybe appealing to a broader audience. I feel like I know where this is going for you, Cameron, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, interesting. Both very good questions. I like the direction, Tim. Yeah, for me, one of the things that always has bothered me is when directors start making films for their fans, or like for the expectation of what their fans um think a Wes Anderson film will be, or I think actually Tarantino is probably most notorious for this. In some ways, until his last movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he had made movies that were for his fans in a lot of ways. And for me, I always want to see directors stretch their legs and kind of find new avenues to be creative. And I honestly don't think that's a tall thing to ask. Like, I obviously they're they're comfortable with what they do, and they're comfortable stylistically with with where they position themselves. But I think people like Wes Anderson, I think Wes Anderson has explored a lot of different, maybe not styles, but he's explored a lot of different um, scenarios, I guess. And I would kind of be interested in seeing him pick up different concepts as well, or different styles as well. So I mean, for me, I'd always want a director to not cater towards like a general audience necessarily, but do something that is outside of their wheelhouse. And I always find there's something interesting, and usually there's something good about good about seeing a director do something very different from his usual element. You think about someone like Hawks, who made so many um, you know uh, basically just talky comedies for half of his career, and then he stretched his legs into so many different genres. And there's something special about that. There's something that you don't really get nowadays. And I was thinking a lot about our discussion with Ari Aster and Hereditary, because he's another person that I think is relevant to this topic. And I don't know. For me, I want Ari Aster to make like a drama in a lot of ways. I want
Mm.
him to do something kind of straightforward and make a movie that's about not something supernatural or horror element, um, but something that is all encompassing, I guess. So yeah, I I want directors to stretch a little bit. I want them to be a little uncomfortable, because I think that's actually when you get the best art. So
My thoughts are very split on this because I think most people can relate with someone or some sort of creative that you're just kind of like bought into their journey as a creative person, whether it's a filmmaker, an artist, a music maker, someone that is doing something creative or stylistic, maybe like an influencer or someone that's making digital content of some kind. Sometimes you just become like a super fan of someone and what they do.
mhm.
But I do think that so often I don't care about the creator, and what draws me in is that grab that sort of transcends fan love and also like someone who might be somewhat similar, like in a similar camp. I had a recent experience listening to an artist named San Holo, who's like an EDM artist, and he did his last record called what was it, Album One, like back in 2018. And one of his songs came up just randomly recently. I've been listening to this record nonstop after I heard this song. but it's called like BBUOK or something like that. And I'm just like, it was like that initial catch where I was like, I like this sound. Who is this? You know what I mean? Like, it's like there's that initial catch that they get you in the door, and then you kind of like fall down this hole of like creativity. And so for me, like most of the time, like if a creative is like, I'm going to go all the way out there for my fans, like let's say a creative is like, I'm just going to like make a movie in Latin with no subtitles because that's what I've always really wanted to do. You know, like it's kind of almost blocking a lot of people from enjoying something good. Like I feel like you're just so separated from reality in some kind of way. I don't know, like I tend to be more critical of that. I love when a creative or like especially a director in movies, like they have an ability to reach both crowds with something that's like masterful, you know. That's what really draws me in. So I don't know very much about Wes Anderson. I know that he did do that movie Isle of Dogs. I don't really know anything else about him. I'm sure we'll cover him eventually.
Yeah, we should. I appreciate Wes Anderson a lot. I think my favorite of his movies is Moonrise Kingdom. Just a very touching movie in a lot of ways, and one that left kind of an impact on me as a young adult. Yeah, but for me, you know, there are genuine super fans of his, and he's one of those directors who kind of has a quote unquote following. So I get where Tim's coming from with talking about his work as being like very catering towards like the ultra fans of Wes Anderson.
Yeah,
which
it's just like George Lucas.
Not really.
Cameron's hesitation on screen.
Well, yeah. I do want to tackle a little bit of what Tim talked about in the, you know, the second part of his question, because I do think that's interesting. He talked about sort of how do you judge a movie's performance in sort of I guess how does a general audience judge a movie's performance when you actually don't know what the box office numbers are, because they're on streaming. Yeah, this is super interesting because this is totally new landscape for movies and for content in general. I mean, people are you know, it was a very easy metric to find out whether a movie did well or not beforehand. You looked at the budget, you looked at sort of the percentage of how much more how much more box office than the movie's budget it made, and that's kind of how you determined whether or not the movie did well or not. You know, if a movie made twice its budget, that was kind of seen in a lot of ways. That was, you know, it wasn't seen as a failure necessarily, but it was kind of dicey a little bit. People wanted to be making a lot more than just twice the budget. And especially, you know, you could break it down by domestic or international gross and whatnot. But, you know, there was an actual physical metric that we could look at before. And now with Netflix, I mean, it's been like this for forever. Even in the TV days, you could look at the Nielsen rating and see whether, you know, see what a show was see how many ratings the show was pulling in, basically. And you cannot do that anymore. And it's been like that actually since Netflix sort of became the dominant TV platform. And that's very interesting, and it's not something that I have an answer for necessarily. I guess the only thing that we can say is we could look at a movie's past performance by their future, I guess not just the sequels, but what gets greenlit in the future, essentially. So the only way that we'll be able to know that Dune did well, and you know, Dune had a theatrical release. obviously right now it's doing pretty well, and comparatively I wouldn't say it's like a smashing success, but it's doing a lot better than Blade Runner did. And the only way that we can know that it's kind of on track for what the um what the studio was looking for is that it got greenlit. The sequel got greenlit. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what we're going to have to look for in the future is, okay, either does the project get picked up by the next does the project get picked up by the same studio for the next time? Like, does Scorsese make another movie with Netflix? Does does is Dune going to get a sequel? Essentially, like that's kind of how we're going to be able to gauge, but we really aren't going to have that concrete number anymore. And that's a little bit unfortunate because we are not going to be able to see the back end anymore. And it's going to be a problem. I can tell you this right now. It's going to be a problem with general audiences where, either the media or, something is going to try to sway you one way or another, sway the audience one way or another, and it's not going to work. And there's going to be confusion on what actually is successful and what's not successful. I'm just telling you right now, there's going to be an issue with it in the next 10 plus years. So get ready.
If it isn't already happening, right? I can't believe that Dune wasn't greenlit for a sequel. When I walked out, I was like, man, I can't wait for the second one. And then someone told me, they're like, well, it's not greenlit yet. And I was like, what are you telling me that I just walked out? And then the week later, right? It was like, okay, yeah, it's confirmed. And I was like, wow, it's just weird. It's strange that nobody knew. Even it seemed like even in some of the press interviews of the cast that I was watching on YouTube, they were like, well,
just the fact that it was called Dune. It was just the fact that it was sort of there was no reference in the marketing material to it being a part 1 and part 2. When
the movie starts, it says part 1. So
but it was not offered essentially as a part 1 movie. So whatever. I do feel like we should intro the not just the movie but the month, but I'm sure we're going to go long because we have a lot to catch up on. So
it's fine. I mean, they missed an episode last week. Come on, guys, we're doing it for the fans. So Cameron, I want to pick your brain on this though.
Yeah.
Just to bounce off this topic that Tim's talking about. First Man, the movie we're talking about today, in terms of the performance and whatnot, I don't know why I have a feeling that nobody has heard of this movie.
True.
I'm not entirely sure why.
Very true. So I was actually looking at the numbers earlier, and I don't want to say it did terribly, but it definitely did not do very well. It was kind of, so man, I actually kind of I didn't want to intro this as sort of the point of the movie.
Right.
But the partially what happened to this movie was like such an AstroTurf campaign against it. And one of the things that happened was there was a kerfuffle about not showing the flag planting sequence, that's very famous on the moon landing, and that was sort of that was kind of a Fox News take, which genuinely, that's why I didn't want to get into it to begin with, because
sure
this movie I think has so much more to say than well, first of all, it's a very patriotic movie,
yes.
Genuinely, but also it has so much more to say than that. It's an extremely it's a movie about fatherhood and much more than that. But yeah, partially it definitely got buried. And weirdly, it's funny. I was talking about this with Juzo, how movies that are, or people who are kind of quote unquote canceled by the left. In a lot of ways, they get like Gina Carano. Do you know her?
Right.
She was then hired for a movie, but by the Daily Wire and whatnot. So like, there's like this like protection on that side, and then in some ways, this movie got astroturfed by the right, totally unreasonably. And there was genuinely no like surrounding like hoorah for this movie from the other side. In fact, I was reading a New Yorker article today that was basically like, oh yeah, this is actually, whether or not the right is taking down this movie, this is actually just like a reactionary far right movie, so whatever, like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so weird. So this movie got totally like smeared before it came out. So
Weird.
I don't want to the problem is I don't want to preface this conversation with that. I guess
you're making it clear, Cayman. I think if you made it this far in the episode, we like to take tangents, but it is an interesting fact, and I was completely unaware of this conversation around the film, so I'm really excited to share my thoughts on it.
Yeah. So that was kind of what was happening behind the scenes, and it's super unfortunate because I think this genuinely great movie got totally dismissed and shellacked by everybody, and not given any chance. And like you said, it came out to basically no fanfare at all. Did very poorly at the box office. Budget wise, it was about $60 million. Box office wise, it was about $100 million, which, generally is considered not a flop, but pretty bad. You don't want to see that kind of return. When you spend $60 million, you're expecting to gross at probably at least $200 to $250 million, at least. So yeah, that was, probably a major disappointment. And it's really too bad. But that's totally not the thing that is most important about this movie. The most important thing, in introducing this month, is that this is the third feature film from Damien Chazelle, who I think is one of the foremost directors of. So, welcome to Modern Young Directors Month, and I kind of want to preface that by saying I don't really have any rules about that, but I will say generally my thinking is directors who kind of had their major movies or major starts in the 2010s, they don't necessarily have to be like super young, and partially that is because there really isn't that many very young directors anymore. And it's tough because there's even the sort of, super indie young directors, a lot of them are in their sort of later 30s, 40s. And so, it's hard to kind of pin down like an age range for what I'm kind of talking about. So the directors that we're going to go into are going to be younger and starting their career in the 2010s and sort of having their major breakthroughs, I guess, in the 2010s. And I think that's important because what I'm trying to get at with this month is, where are we going as a film industry? Where are we sort of positioned, and are we actually cultivating young filmmakers or not? And I would say my position on this, just to be upfront, is that I don't actually think we are cultivating a young film authorship class. Like I don't think we're giving a lot of tools to young creators nowadays. And oftentimes even young directors who are talented are kind of funneled into not just Marvel movies, but also TV, I think, is sucking a lot of really good talent, from actual, feature films and whatnot. So it's interesting to one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up was because it's interesting to see in 2021 where we're gonna be at in terms of how movies, who's making movies in the next 10 to 15 years, and how are they going to be positioned, how are we positioning young creators nowadays? And I think, transparently, I think it's bad. I
Mm.
don't think we're doing a good job. And so I wanted to bring up sort of standouts in who I think, like, what we can do, and who are sort of the greats of nowadays, who are the great come up stories of the 2010s. But honestly, there's a worry in the back of my mind. So that's kind of what I'm bringing up here. So
I am so excited to get into this month. They say that 70's the new 50, so I guess that translates to Hollywood too. Under 45 years old. I know that doesn't seem like young and up and coming, but I think you're staging it right, Cameron. We're trying to look at who are going to be the prolific figures in Hollywood in the next 15 years. And we're looking at the people who are kind of in their early stages of career that have so much more to give. Where you look at, I mean, we love Scorsese, but we don't know how many movies he's got left.
yeah. Tarantino as well said that he's going to retire. Um, there's a lot of I mean, Fincher is in his later 60s, and I don't think he's going to slow down anytime soon. But he's at a point where you got to start worrying about him a little bit. There's a lot of these directors who we consider sort of the tippy top of what directorship means, who are kind of, I don't want to say running out of steam, but you start looking at your watch when you think about the next movies that they have. So it's concerning a little bit that we're not actually, I'm worried that we're not actually cultivating young talent. So yeah.
Well, let's get into this film and we can close out our thoughts on the month. And of course, we'll be reflecting on the conclusions of the theme towards the end of the month. So make sure to tune into each episode and our interpretations on that. Cameron, should I get into my impressions of this movie?
Yeah.
I think I'm ready to talk about it.
Yeah, let's do it.
I want to start by saying I am not drawn to biopics
Mhm.
at all. I think that they are scary for me as a lover of history because most often they get carried away in things that misrepresent history, or they kind of reinterpret them in
Yeah.
their own way, right? I can't really think of a biopic that I'm really drawn to. I think I've seen a lot of war movies based on a true story, right? That have been engaging and exciting because the based on a true story is loose enough that it can be a good action movie, right? A lot of people talk about Bohemian Rhapsody, which might not be the most like flawless film that you've seen. And personally, I feel like I'm not a massive Queen fan, but something about that film felt more like you were going to the concerts than actually like experiencing the life of the character. Even though they were trying to do that, you're really just waiting for the next show, right? In that movie. With this film, I was like, okay, it's about the guy who lands on the moon. I wonder what's going to happen,
Yeah.
And this film starts off with a pretty intense action set piece that you're like, what is this? Like, I don't quite understand what's going on. This has got to be one of the first biopics that uses the historical settings and the events as actual setting,
Yeah.
instead of the pillar of the film or the foundation of the film, right? I absolutely love this film. I thought that, I mean, I was genuinely shocked about how little I had heard about it. in the
Yeah.
middle of the movie.
Yeah.
This is one of the best roles I've ever seen Ryan Gosling in. And he channels some of what I loved about his performance in Drive, which is like this contemplative silence, like this masculine presence that can't quite put his feelings into words, but he's expressing them in his own way. And the movie tackles so many dark themes around grieving and striving for achieving your dreams with remaining hopeful and consistent in tone and uh genuinely heartfelt to the ending moments, um really not being about the moon landing at all,
Yeah.
and really reflecting on an individual's journey. And I think what I love so much about this movie is that you don't have to give two craps about the moon landing, and this movie can really mean something to you. And what's cool is that I actually like some of the NASA stuff. I enjoy the history of the space race. And so those were just like, that was like the icing on the cake, you know, the cherry on top. They actually show some fun public feelings about, you know, NASA and the government spending, and some commentary about how people's perception was like where they're feeling in terms of the space race. And that also plays into, you know, Neil Armstrong's experience as a character, right? I mean, I don't know how much higher of praise I can give this movie. I think you should watch it, most
Yeah.
definitely. And again, I hate biopics, so I don't know. Like, I'm just kind of surprised how much I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear you say that, because that was my feeling as well. And you know, I've been a little bit hit or miss with biopics. I think there's some that are very good. For example, I love Darkest Hour. I think that's like, it's a spectacular movie. But you know, there are plenty of other examples where you like totally phoned in. You know, not
American Sniper.
yeah, I agree. I don't like that movie. Yeah, Jews is gonna hate hearing that, but yeah, I think that movie is like pretty boring and not very interesting. But the yeah, this movie to me, I was so shocked and actually kind of upset when this movie came out that people were like giving it such a bad rap in a lot of ways. And actually, if you see the critical reviews of it, it's very positive. Everybody really who's kind of seen it, everybody really likes this movie. And the problem is it really had a bad time coming out, and was generally buried in a way that I think is totally undeserved. But for me, what is so effective about this movie is you feel that the personal struggle of Neil Armstrong is a universal struggle. Something, almost this achievement of greatness at great cost, of, his own personal, his own personal life, and in a lot of ways his friends and sort of the people that he cares about. And there's this sense that he, as a character, and I can't really speak to him as a real person. Although I did receive a letter from Buzz Aldrin once, so that's an interesting wrinkle to this. I know him personally.
What are you talking about?
No, and it was my Eagle Scout. When you become an Eagle Scout, you send a bunch of people send you letters, essentially.
Oh.
And so I got a letter from Buzz Aldrin, one of the very prized letters that I have. So
that's awesome.
Obviously, unfortunately, actually, Armstrong had passed away by that time. But so these were actually personal heroes of mine, genuinely. And growing up, I'd always loved the story of the space race, and sort of the the complicated history around America versus the Soviet Union, and kind of, um, it was something that I was interested back then, and even now, I mean, it's something that kind of, every time I see this movie, I get teary eyed when, at the, when they're in quarantine. I guess spoilers, they come back, they don't die. And they're in quarantine, and JFK, they're listening to the JFK speech, and I still get teary eyed in that moment. But I like what you said in that it really is not about the sort of um, the actual moon landing. It really isn't, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's about the character, and the character of Neil Armstrong, and what it means to be someone, who is destined in a lot of ways for greatness, and the responsibility that imparts on you, and almost the crippling weight of that responsibility.
But even further, right? I think what was so surprising for me, and you touched on this, is how relatable this character's journey is.
Yeah.
Maybe because, like, you imagine someone who's going to the moon and being instated as this historical figure would be hard to connect with in some sort of way, right? They're on this journey of, like, just like epic proportion,
But he's
right?
such an everyman.
Yes, exactly. And I think what's surprising about it, or I guess in a writing form, what I really liked about it is that it's kind of something that um Neil's character is unable to avoid at a certain point,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
where he's put in enough time, like I think about myself where it's like I put in this work for a college degree and I'm starting my career, and at a certain point it's somewhat solidifying the trajectory of where I'm going, right? And that's not to say that you can't switch and move things around, but I'm probably aimed to finish something that I'm starting right now. Um, and I guess, like, in a personal sense, I was like, wow, it's kind of like this movie explores the reality that, like, life goes on and the people around you, you know, they come and go, and the toll that has on someone that's trying to achieve a very linear objective in some ways, like, the amount of pressure that's on that person, and the toll that it takes on Armstrong's character. It's just, I really didn't think I was going to be able to relate to someone who's trying to go to the moon, but the story is very much like it's I don't know, like it's super reflective. It's very personal somehow. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, and part of it has to do with his relationship to his family, and
yeah,
I think that's the thrust of the movie is about how, um I- almost it's the- uh, there's so much about being a father, and being a, um like a genuinely responsible person, someone who is facing something so dangerous in their life, but who also has a necessary responsibility to their kids, and someone who also has a genuine love for their kids, um and um refreshingly, there's so much good about him as like a dad figure.
mm,
You know what I mean? Like there's not a lot of movies nowadays that tackle good dads.
yeah,
um and that really is a shame, because I think a lot of people, um so many people probably need something like that,
yeah,
as an not as an example, but need something as sort of um need that as a good story in their lives.
Yeah.
You know,
I
someone
mean, shout
who's
out not sorry to cut you off, but like shout
yeah,
out, not to bring it back to this, but shout out to Dune for doing that too. I was taken
yes,
back
yeah, 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 100%.
how good Oscar Isaac is in that film, and you're just like, you love him. But I totally agree about Gosling in this movie too.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's something I mean, at the time when I saw it in 2018, I was totally taken aback by how it was about um a father basically faced with the biggest challenge anybody had ever been faced with at the time, and not about him, but really about how he, um, like really about his family in a lot of ways, and really about how he was doing it for his daughter, and doing it as a um in some ways like as a sacrifice, and it was so like it was so refreshing to me to see that um on screen and portrayed in such a beautiful and poetic way, um that I was like I was genuinely um like shocked. I was actually shocked at the movie, when I came out of it, because I was like, this is a movie um about fatherhood that is saying something good and decent, and saying something so so correct. And I've been we've been so lacking in that feeling. It was like it was, you know, it was like water walking through the desert. It was so beautiful to see. And now, you know, again watching it, you know, I was, you know, uh I was tearing up in many moments with, you know, especially when he's playing with his kids in that sequence. Like it just makes me, I don't know, there's something about it that makes me so, um it's so bittersweet and done so beautifully that I just can't help but be moved by it. And Yeah, I think I think part of it is the score by Hurwitz, which I think is amazing and so well done. But
Totally agree.
part of it is also the filmmaking. And I think Chazelle. Well, first of all, he knows how to elevate your emotions with music in a way that is brilliant. But also he knows what character, like he knows about character motivation. And there's something so special about what he does with these characters. And one thing that I will point out is that the writer of this movie is the writer of both Spotlight and The Post, two movies that I kind of notoriously don't like. Um, and and it works so well in this movie. Like his writing works so well, and I think partially it's probably the performance and the filmmaking, the craft of what Chazelle is doing. There's something very very special about his filmmaking in this movie. So um, yeah,
Yeah, I I was stunned by Ryan Gosling's performance in
yeah,
this movie. And I think that he is someone that has shown moments of greatness in acting, and then there's other moments where he's used as kind of like the sexiest man of the year kind of thing. Um I I don't know, like I've always kind of liked him because of, you know, his role in Drive, and I thought that's like, I don't, for me that's always been an important movie that connected me to exploring more out there movies when I was early in college. But I just, when I first saw him for Armstrong, I'm like, I don't think this is the right guy. And within 5 minutes of the movie, I'm like, oh no, like he's bringing something that I don't think a lot of actors could bring
yeah.
to a character like this. Just to touch on the score again, I don't know why, but this movie has a sound of like the old I Spy books where you'd open up like the moon picture where you're like looking for stuff in I Spy. I don't know if that makes sense, but like the
It
score has like
does. So there's an instrument called the theremin, which is kind of
there we go.
a classic 1960s instrument, and it's something that Neil Armstrong actually loved in real life.
Oh my gosh.
And there are actually one or two pieces in this film, musical pieces that were Neil Armstrong's favorites.
I love it.
And so it was kind of, a lot of the music was actually based in sort of real life, and so yeah, that feeling, that old school kind of classic kind of sci-fi vibe, part of it is the theremin and sort of instruments used, but part of it I think is elevated by Hurwitz's composition, and there's something about the score that is very haunting and beautiful at the same time. It's
True.
like mysterious um and gorgeous, and it like draws you in. I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but
No,
it's
it's
so
true.
beautiful.
Yeah. I found that the score was so pleasant mixed with the presentation of this movie. I think that this film has some interesting cinematography that was a little off-putting. I had a moment where I was watching it and they're like shaking the camera to like represent like the takeoff of the rocket.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, like this makes sense." And then like a little bit later there'd be a dramatic scene with the camera like being fumbled left and right. I'm like, "Are they taking off in a rocket or is something just happening?" Like I just felt like there were these moments in the film that were supposed to be like kind of like adding stylistic intensity, but it kind of felt like the cameraman had never held a camera in his life. And I was like, this just feels like they're cutting to the next camera that's on a tripod just because they don't want to see that guy holding the camera anymore. And maybe that's just the editor in my brain, who's done too much video work. But I found some of the cinematography to be weird, but like not like breaking the film. It was just kind of like, it was sort of an odd choice. When the camera's being held still, I think this movie is extremely gorgeous.
Yeah, I actually kind of agree. I do think the cinematography is very, very good in this movie, generally, but I kind of agree. There's a couple interesting choices, where it's like pseudo documentary style,
Right.
where I almost feel like it feels a little bit out of place, and
Yeah.
I noticed that at this time watching it, where I was like, this is a weird snap zoom. I don't know if we needed to do
Yes, I
that.
know which
Like,
scene you're talking about.
yeah,
I know which scene you're talking about.
and but to me, like, I don't really, I don't want to say I don't judge that, but I kind of, um, that's fine to me. Although,
M-
th-
Most people are not going to notice if they're
no,
being
no,
honest.
not at all. And to be fair, like you know, there are moments where it's like it's so gorgeous. Like,
Yeah.
parts of this movie is like insanely good looking, um and and I love the, not just the framing and the composition, but the sort of the palette and the production design in this movie is like very like realistic 60s, and I think the camera choice, making it on 35 millimeter film, and kind of blowing it up to a bigger, to a bigger screen. It's like it makes it feel like gritty in a way, and
Yeah.
there's something very gorgeous about the movie. I agree with you about those couple of moments where you're like, do we need that, that like super handheld, or like that super documentary style?
Hmm.
I don't know, but to me, totally not a flaw in the movie. I don't even care about that, because um the the characters really are the emotional impact, and the writing of the movie. is kind of what draws you in the most and is what keeps you there. And then on top of that, compounded is the sort of effectiveness of the filmmaking. And I don't know, it's just super impressive. I can't say enough good things about this movie. Especially because like it's totally underrated in so many ways. People don't know about it. And it's such a beautiful movie and such a movie that has so much to say. And is just overlooked entirely. I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but I almost feel like I'm like the sole champion of this movie, and I was back in the day, when 3 years ago or whatever. I was when it came out. I was saying like this movie is amazing and is something to behold. And should not be slept on. But unfortunately, I do actually feel like it has been slept on. And I feel like it's a movie. And unfortunately, I don't. And we're gonna get into this when we talk about Trey Edward Schultz, who is going to be our last movie of the month. But there are a lot of directors now in sort of who kind of were, maybe shining stars or early talents who have kind of been, I don't want to say put on the back burner, but who I'm afraid are being looked at with, being looked at as like, but are they money makers? Like, can we funnel them into Marvel movies? Like, are we gonna be able to make $1 billion off of them? Maybe not. And that's what I get afraid of. And actually, Villeneuve was one of those directors until Dune success, who I had been constantly saying like, yeah, but he hasn't made a movie that had made money, basically.
Yeah.
And that's not technically true. Like many of his movies grossed back more than like technically grossed back more than they costed. But partially like that's not what counts. It's like if the studio is looking at it like, pretty disappointing, that's bad. That's a bad sign.
Yeah. Come on, guys, go watch Arrival. Go watch Sicario.
Yeah.
Go watch Dune.
Yeah, and like all of those movies, which I consider to be very, 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 very good. All of those movies were pretty soft and didn't do very well. And same with this movie, where I'm like, I mean, La La Land, I think. So first, Whiplash, and we should talk about this as, we talked about Whiplash. Where do you think this compares to with Whiplash in terms of his filmmaking style?
So yeah, I mean, we didn't clarify this, but I had no idea he did Whiplash. And you said La La Land. So this is his third movie, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I gotta say, if I had 3 movies under my belt, I'd be proud. I can't.
Yeah.
It's just like.
Yeah, if you had those 3 movies that you did, you'd be and that's a good lineup for sure.
Seriously,
he's batting in my mind. He's batting at 100%. So
I think that Whiplash is a more exciting film.
Yeah,
and I'm not entirely sure how to put it.
Yeah, sure,
but I don't think it's as deep.
I totally agree.
I think that the movie is very fun because of jazz, and I don't even like. It's one of those movies that you're just like, you need to see the next performance. Actually, strangely, kind of like a movie we were talking about earlier, Bohemian Rhapsody. But I do think that the drama is elevated to 11 compared to Bohemian Rhapsody's drama just being kind of bland.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm a big fan of that movie. We've reviewed it on this podcast. La La Land is interesting because I haven't finished it. I kind of turned it off halfway through. I'm not a musical guy, and that upsets a lot of people when I say I turn off that movie halfway through. I'm sorry, Cameron. You gave me a little sneer. It's fine.
No.
Um,
We actually talked about this before. I don't begrudge anybody for not being a musical person. And I can understand why people wouldn't
but
be. But
my
I do think La La Land is something special, regardless of if you like musicals or not. So
I will go out on a limb and say this right now. I did not give it enough of a chance. I have no doubt that the movie is special. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It just wasn't catching me because they were singing. And if I would just put that aside for a moment, I probably would be able to get through the movie and really appreciate it. But I was just kind of like, nobody's forcing me to watch this. I don't need to. So,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and like I was watching it with Jules and she just, I don't know. I think she like fell asleep or something. And I was like, well, yeah, that's the night. I'm not gonna finish it. So I mean, like if I was watching something like Mad Max and she fell asleep, I'll be like, yeah, I'm all the way through. I'm gonna
Yeah,
finish
yeah.
it. She won't know the
Fair.
difference, right?
Fair enough.
So
But I do recommend that movie a lot. I think that's it's such a good movie, and um, my girlfriend is also someone who does not really like musicals, and also enjoyed that movie. So that's kind of my gauge in a lot of ways.
yeah,
I'm someone who you know I like musicals. It's never been a bother for me to have people singing. I don't like every musical, and there are many musicals that I think are genuinely just bad that people like. I think Cats is terrible. They had the original Cats. The Cats the movie is also terrible, but I think there's a lot of musicals that uh, just don't. I don't know. There's something there's a different element to them than movies, and it doesn't really translate always. But that movie specifically, I think, is genuinely there's something genuinely great about La La Land,
the
and
I will say like
transcendent about it.
the argument around Whiplash being a musical, like then I guess at that point I'm like kind of on board. I don't know why I always think about
You just
Mission
don't want
Impossible.
people to like break out in song. But, I mean,
Yeah, I always
I
think
understand that, but it's I think you're wrong, but I can get it. I can
I always think
understand it.
about Yeah, I always think about like Rogue Nation and that scene in the opera where they're like trying to snipe each other and stuff in Mission Impossible. I'm like, now that's a musical I'd watch. Like that's like I'm like, oh, this is like way more interesting than people like shuffling their hands in the street or whatever the heck is going on in movies like that. So, um, anyways, back to this film. Yeah, I mean he's knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
Even for a movie that I didn't finish it, there's no doubt there's excellence with it. So go watch First Man. I think that yeah. I don't know. Like I'm kind of ready to jump to giving it a rating, Cameron. I know you might have a few more things to say, but for me it's like I think this movie's for everyone. I think it's like easily recommendable for everyone, which is like not even like it's weird because for me after seeing it I'm like it's not even out of left field, but I feel like most people would be like, are you serious? Like out of all the movies that you guys have watched and not given this rating, I'm like, yeah, but it's great. I don't know, it's really easy to watch.
Yeah, it's funny because obviously the show is pitched as a movie. We watch classics, and this is a movie from a couple of years ago that got basically no recognition. So
Right.
this is verified not a classic. But I totally agree. This is for everybody, and it's a shame that people did not watch this when it came out and don't regard it as a great movie, because it genuinely is. There's something about this movie that is so special, and the I don't know. I think thematically, like the idea of being faced almost with like certain death, in they obviously you know that he comes home. You know that Neil Armstrong lives, but character-wise and in context of the movie, there's absolutely no certainty, and almost it's kind of positioned as like this is an extremely dangerous mission. There's
Yeah.
almost no chance that he's coming home, and that sequence where she has him sit down with his kids and say,
Just
like,
fantastic.
it's amazing. And there's something about this movie that like I think highly regards fatherhood and the incredible weight of being a father, and also motherhood too.
Yeah.
I think I guess just parenthood especially, like it really cements the fact that these people leave an impact on their kids' lives, and there's something important about being there, and almost as important as going to the moon. It's
Yeah.
there's something so beautiful, and I the first time that I saw this, and it wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't quite as impactful, but it didn't. I knew it was coming, so it didn't hit me as emotionally. The first time when he left his, he left that bracelet, it really, really like devastated me when I saw it the first time.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of a book that my mom used to read to me called To the Moon and Back. And there was something about it that I couldn't shake, but love how respectful and genuine that relationship was. Even though you only get a few glimpses, and I think it's important. I don't know. I think there's something so important about that, that interaction in the very beginning between
Yeah.
Neil and his daughter Karen.
And I don't know, like it's so brief and so traumatizing. The way that they do like the grave lowering
Yeah.
in the beginning is just like,
You just hear the crank,
wow.
and
Yeah.
it's so sad. It's like reminiscent in some ways of like the feeling that you get in Hereditary.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's like there's just like this devastation.
Yeah.
Hereditary, obviously, it's like dialed up to like 13, but like in this movie, you feel like you feel the loss, but you feel like the need to move on, the
Yeah.
need to do something, again, do something great, and then the dedication at the end is so powerful.
I think what makes that ending scene so just moving is that when a father and a man who's caring and good like achieves something so great, like his heart and his mind is still on like his family
Yeah.
and his kids,
Yeah.
And it's like, I think we've all kind of had moments where you're in the middle of something and you're just like, well, this is great, but I'm ready to like go home, like I'm ready to be home, or I'm ready to be in, I'm ready to look forward to going back somewhere, or reflecting or being nostalgic on something that was,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've had moments like that in life myself. So I was really touched by this movie. I do think that you gotta watch it. You're not gonna be bored like most biopics.
Oh, yeah.
You're not gonna be rolling your eyes.
It is actually also a great action movie too. Like,
Yeah,
like
no,
actually genuinely like, and I like how we're not really talking about that much, because I wouldn't say it's the focus of the movie either, but
right.
it is very intense, and so many sequences where you're like totally on the edge of your seat. Even though like you know the story, everybody knows
Yeah, yeah.
what happens to Neil Armstrong.
Well, but
Um,
what I think is interesting is that there are a lot of moments in the story and the action that revolve around tragedy that kind of shock you as a viewer, um, and it really puts you to like a moment of like, whoa, I don't know if I didn't realize like how many sacrifices were made for people to get to the point that they're at. I didn't realize how difficult it was for NASA to push these boundaries, and they establish it really early on in the movie with like, oh, we're gonna do something that's so far out technologically that like it's gonna leave the Russians behind, and the sacrifices that are made are kind of critiqued by the public and really taken hard by the men who are working to achieve this goal. I mean, um, I don't know. It's Apollo 11, and not many people think about the other 10 missions too much. So, at least, I mean, Cameron and I obviously didn't live through that. And so it's like we don't have any sort of nostalgic attachment to experiencing or remembering, the moon landing. So it's kind of, yeah, I think kind of revisiting the fact that Apollo 11 was the 11th mission is like, oh wow, I didn't realize kind of how intense this situation is for the explorers who are going out there. So yeah, I think that wraps it up for me, Cameron. Anything else you want to add?
no, yeah, I just highly recommend this movie. I feel like it was totally passed over, and it's a shame because it's a genuinely good one. And I want to break this out into sort of what we're talking about through the rest of the month. In terms of who these modern directors are, I think there's you know obviously there's many more that we can't cover, and I think there's some that we'll go over who maybe are kind of dark horse picks, I guess. For me, they're people who have kind of shown themselves to be great, shown themselves to be um, worthy of sort of the mantle in some ways. But I would also love to hear people's suggestions of who sort of is, who are the great directors of now, who are the great directors upcoming in the next 15 years. I want to know, because it's interesting to think about, um, sort of where we're gonna go in this new direction. For me, I was always considering the fact that there's so many people on YouTube. There's so many people who are doing film criticism. Um, I thought for sure that there was going to be a breakthrough of those people, jumping into um, jumping into the creative world, jumping into either directing or writing or something. And there's really only been one or two that have, broken that barrier. Um, and I'm interested to see if it happens genuinely. But I don't know. Now I'm thinking there's not that there's no hope for modern directors, but I'm thinking that there are slim pickings for sure. So I'm interested in kind of going through the next few weeks. And next up is we're going to talk more about Denis Villeneuve, who kind of made his. He debuted two French movies in 2007, 2009, but really his career sort of picked up and started to take off with the movie that we're going to talk about this next week. which is Prisoners. So
Very excited for that.
I am also very excited for that. Also, he's not necessarily young. He's 54, so I don't want to but when he made Prisoners, he was actually very young as far as directors go. And he's someone who kind of has come out the gate swinging and has proven himself to be masterful in what he does in the last, almost, the last less than 10 years. I mean, it's kind of insane how much he's proven himself. So, yeah, so I'm excited to talk about him, and we'll kind of, I'm sure we'll talk more about Dune and kind of where he's going to go from here. But yeah.
Oh yes, I'm itching to talk about Dune, Cameron.
Yeah,
I'm
me
like
too.
almost vetoing anything that you have to say. Like I need that to be an episode.
All right, yeah. Well, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. I just want to close out the show with another question from one of our patrons. You know where to find our Patreon if you want to support us. This is coming from Juzo Greenwood, one of our, guests who comes on the show. Very insightful with film. He asked this: what is something that if a movie has it, it automatically gets points for you? Like my friend Jim, who always likes a movie a tad more if there's a scene of kids playing soccer in the street. I could also ask this question in reverse too, like movie pet peeves or something like that. And he states, for me, it's musical sing-alongs and dance sequences. Also cross-cutting, neon lights, sequences of food being prepared, and endings with a kiss or an embrace. Cameron, anything that if a movie has it, it's just points for you. Done deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said about those kind of, I don't want to say like food preparation sequences, but just like I love like prep montages. There's so many of them. Like if even if an action movie has like a sequence where they're getting ready, like I love that. I love those sequences. And that, to me, that gets points. I would also say a movie that has like a final showdown, but like a true like prolonged final showdown. You know what I mean? Like there's like something that is like really strung out where like the bad guy is just like so evil but so menacing and scary, like and there's a nervousness about it. I think this movie would count. I think First Man kind of has a final showdown in it structurally, where it's the final showdown is getting to the moon, obviously.
Yeah.
So like I love that kind of that sequence of being like the ultimate test, I guess. I think that's that's I appreciate that. And especially if it's like leaned into a bit. There's a lot of like final showdowns where it's like it is, but it's like they kind of cheap out. I want them to lean into it. Be the final showdown. Like that's awesome. Drag it out.
Some final showdowns where it's like very personal. Those are the ones 100%. That are like, I mean, we really raved about the good, the bad, the ugly, but that ending, I mean, come on. You got it.
Love
like,
it.
What kind? Like
love
you just
it.
know that you've been anticipating it since reading the title of the film.
Yeah.
So a movie like that just has an epic finale. For me, actually, just kind of in line with this movie, and maybe part of the reason why I love it so much. But when a movie does like massive planets or like space, like landscapes. I just am always drawn in by that. I think this movie has some just incredible moments where there's, when him and his partner, like halfway through, they're trying to stabilize the ship. Not after they dock, but like when they're trying to figure out like if they did it correctly to dock before they dock, right? And he like spins the ship and you see the curvature of the Earth, right? Dune has fantastic planet sequences. Star Wars Absolutely love it. Interstellar, just mind blowing.
Yeah.
2001, just fantastic. Like I mean, I know that those are like, there are a lot of like nerdy films, but like when a movie can nail that sort of that look that isn't Guardians of the Galaxy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like spacescapes, but like something that's like, these
You
juggernaut
know that
planets.
shot early on in First Man where he's like holding on
Yeah.
to his plane, and then he hits over the atmosphere and it shows in his visor.
Hmm.
There's something so awesome about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and then obviously, like, when there's like the blackness in in the cockpit, and then you see you see the texture of the moon. Oh man, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so good. Yeah, this
Yeah.
movie does that insanely well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that there's other things I probably love in films. Stylish reloads
Yeah,
always gets points.
definitely.
I think seeing the Matrix trailer recently, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of missed that. Like guns as like choreography
Mhm.
is very
Mhm.
fascinating. John Wick does that
Yeah,
really well
yeah,
too. But as far as pet peeves go, Juzo, you talked about dancing and singing out of, I've just we've talked about no way, absolutely not. That's just negative points for me.
I know what he's saying about dancing sequences. There's something very charming about that for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking of ending things. Yeah,
There's a sequence in Jojo Rabbit, where I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a
okay, but
dance
that
sequence in Jojo Rabbit that is just so
are you talking about the ending?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, but that scene is like, I don't know. I guess that's true. That is a fantastic
It's
moment.
just amazing. There's so much emotion and beauty in that scene. It's just so good. And it makes you feel like it. Yeah, I love. I mean, I
But
love that
that's
movie, but I just there's something so beautiful about that sequence.
it's delivered in so much good context. I've thought of another thing I love in movies. This is just random, but we got to wrap it up. But I just something about them, like comedic mockumentaries are just, I just love that. I can't get enough of it
Yeah.
sometimes. Like What We Do in the Shadows, that movie is so good to me. There's a movie that Cameron and I watched that was like, it was just very inappropriate. It's called Pop Star. What is it? Never Stop,
Never stopping.
Yeah, that is just like one of the most aggressive like commentaries on pop star culture. It's made by the Lonely Island guys.
It's pretty
But
funny.
we took our girlfriends to see that movie way back in like early college. Cameron and I were laughing our heads off the entire film. Both of our girlfriends just horrified.
Silence.
They just did not like, you know what? Jules has come around to it now that she's a pop star, like
It's
she's
so
like, okay.
funny. It's so funny.
It's so good.
It's
so good.
There's you know what? Never mind. I'm not gonna.
We should not recommend this. Do not go watch
It's so funny.
it.
I recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah, but even like what the Office does, I think it's overdone at this point. But sometimes you just need it. I mean, What We Do in the Shadows, come on, just good, dry mockumentary stuff. So awesome.
I also love like hard lighting cues. I love it. There's something about it that just, I don't know, just gets me going. Like I'm reminded every time of like Hot Fuzz. There's like there's so many awesome cues in that movie, and that like it's totally not done very well anymore. But like like back in classic movies, they would have sequences where the lights would actually just dim, as they were like contemplating something. The lights would like dim around them, and we don't do that anymore. That's like totally passe. But I just love that. I think there's something so gorgeous about that. I don't know why.
Yeah, watch Hot Fuzz.
Oh
My
yeah,
goodness.
watch Hot Fuzz. Yeah, 100%.
That movie is. I mean, if you get anything from this episode, just go watch Hot Fuzz. That's what I'd say. I think that's the perfect way to close it. We could ramble on for a lot longer. Cameron, I want to give you a chance to talk about pet peeves. Did you say anything? I don't remember.
I didn't.
Like...
Yeah, pet peeves for me. I don't like when movies are. It's so funny because I just recommended Dune, but Dune does this so much.
Yeah.
I don't like when movies are a setup for the next movie. I don't like that. I want movies to be encapsulated, in one story. And I will say, I don't want to spoil it, but Dune has a way of doing that. It's a little convoluted, but my example of this is like Civil War. Captain America: Civil War is not a movie. It's like an episode of a TV show. And I hate that movie because
I don't know. I just
up,
disagree about you. Okay, that movie is. I think it is a very special.
It's not good.
Minus the airport. I feel like if they just deleted the airport scene.
What do you mean deleted? That's like a linchpin. That's like the scene. That's the scene in the movie.
That's like what I'm saying is that scene takes away from what that movie is trying to focus on.
So,
which is
all right for me. that movie has nothing to do with for me that movie is just a setup for the next couple of Marvel movies, which is so annoying. I mean, I guess that's true in the context of like what you're actually talking about, but it's not a contained story. It really isn't. I just don't. I don't like.
I agree with that.
I don't like how it doesn't feel like a movie. And I just can't get on board with that. That's like a number one pet peeve for me. It's when movies are not contained, and they feel like they have no. It feels like there's no direction for me.
Middle movies in a franchise that are.
It's not just that. It's not just that though. I don't mean middle movies. I mean movies that are not. Contained stories, because obviously Empire is a contained story, although it doesn't work without the rest of the movies. And Two Towers is a contained story, though it doesn't work without the rest of the movies. I'm not saying you have to be like divorced from the rest of the movies. I'm saying movies that are not stories without the rest of the movies.
But oh my goodness, we could literally go for now. But Civil War is like I feel like the movie's conflict and setup has to do with like two main characters disagreeing on like some sort of like, I don't know, kind of like a philosophical like restraint on, like I feel like the movie's actually kind of, I think it's good. I think it's deeper than most of the Marvel movies, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I don't see it as, I see it as an episode of TV, as a sort of a cornerstone for the rest of the franchise. I don't see it as a contained story.
Well, let's just agree and say that Fellowship of the Ring is like a perfect movie.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yes.
Talk about like tying a bow. I heard this great
Fellowship
critique.
is almost a perfect movie. I mean, it genuinely is. Yeah.
I heard this great take about the first Dune, the Dune that we've been talking about, this the latest release that we've been going on and on about, and comparing it to the Fellowship. And one of the critiques that I've heard about the newest Dune that we just watched, is that it feels like the Fellowship, except it goes on for like 10 minutes too long at the end or something like that. Mm-hmm. Which I don't know if I agree with it after seeing it a second time, but it's just kind of interesting as you reflect on the Fellowship, being like, wow, they really do they're able to tie up the story and give you so much anticipation for what's to come, but it's like such a great conclusion at the end. It's so moving,
100%. Yeah. I don't know if it, well, let's talk about it later.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, we talk about movies. You know where to support us. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for giving us a week off. Also, the reason we took a week off, potentially, I mean, if you haven't read the Patreon post, I will admit I had a little bit of an experience watching a movie that I didn't want to review on this show. But that's some great content that Cameron and I are going to tap into eventually here on Patreon. I think there's a great discussion there. I know I've talked to a few of you Patreons about it personally. If you want to read what happened, you can check out our Patreon again, patreon.com/ECFS Productions. It's a public post, so you can read about it if you want to learn more, and we will revisit it. But come on, Dune, we got to talk about. We basically talked about Dune this one. Cameron, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
We post every Monday. Thanks for supporting us. Cinema Spectator is an ECFS Productions podcast that is fully funded on patreon.com. Shout out to our producers, Darren O'Neill and Tim Smith, for supporting the show, and to the rest of you that support us at patreon.com/ECFS Productions. If you want to learn more about the benefits you can get, check out our Patreon. The show cannot happen without you great listeners, so we thank you for all your kindness and support.